Good morning again, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. And I want to welcome you to Threat Landscape for 2023, our first webinar that we've done this year. So first of all, I'd like to let you know that we're going to be recording this webinar, and then we're going to publish that out onto our website later on today. And then, of course, we will send you information on how to get connected to that so you can do a rerun of it. Today is all about you, our attendees. So we're going to share with you some of our predictions and threats for 2023. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a Q&A. So any questions, please post them in the chat and we'll get the team to answer the best we can at the end of the webinar. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Gordon Christie, Managing Director of IT Hotdesk. IT Hotdesk, I started that business about 13 years ago from my home study, and today, based at Westhill in Aberdeen, I direct a team of over 15 technical professionals that are delivering varied IT services and solutions to our customer base that's located mostly all over Scotland, but of course further afield as well. Today, we've got two brilliant subject matter experts on this webinar. The first I would like to introduce you to is Javed Malek, who is a lead security awareness advocate at KnowBe4. Javed is an award-winning IT professional with over 20 years experience in the technology sector, and he also currently holds the Guinness World Record for the most views of a cybersecurity lesson on YouTube in 24 hours. So, great accomplishment. We've also got AJ Johnston, our cybersecurity and solutions architect for IT Hotdesk. AJ has been with us now for a good few years at IT Hotdesk, and he's got a passion for protecting our customers from cyber threats. And he is our go-to guy, really, for everything that's cybersecurity related within our customers' environments. AJ is also responsible for our customer solution architecture, which is a great combination when these two kind of roles come together, because every single solution that he designs is what we like to call here secure by design. So it's a great combination in his activities that he does for our business. So let's begin. First of all, I'm going to pass you over to AJ, our cybersecurity expert. AJ is going to tell us about some threats with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So go ahead, AJ. Thanks.
Hi, good morning. There are several emerging threats in cybersecurity for 2023, and with the time that we have today, we're going to discuss just two of the most prominent threats this year. There's obviously many, but time limitations. We're then going to hear from our guest speaker, Javed, who will likely expand on some of the stuff I'm talking about today. So the threats we're going to discuss are artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning, ML. So bad actors are using AI and ML to automate and scale their attacks, making them more sophisticated and difficult to detect. And cloud security threats, almost all companies now are using some form of cloud computing, which has made it a prime target for cyber criminals who are finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities in cloud systems. So let's take a closer look at our first category today, artificial intelligence, commonly known as AI, and machine learning, known as ML. So we're going to start a little bit of an intro to this. So what is artificial intelligence and machine learning? Well, AI and ML are technologies that enable computers to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as recognizing patterns, making predictions, and learning from experience. These terms are often lumped together, so it's quickly worth exploring the differences between them. Artificial intelligence refers to the development of computer systems that can perform tasks such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and language translation, etc. AI systems can be programmed to perform specific tasks, but they generally lack the ability to improve on their own. Now, machine learning, on the other hand, is a subfield of AI that focuses on the development of algorithms and statistical models that enable systems to automatically improve their performance on a specific task through experience. In machine learning, algorithms are trained using large amounts of data to enable computers to make predictions or take actions based on that data. And the algorithms continue to improve over time as they receive more information and feedback. So to summarize this, AI is a broad term that encompasses a range of technologies and techniques for creating intelligent systems, while machine learning is a specific approach to building AI systems. And both AI and ML are legitimately widely used across a variety of industries, including transportation, finance, defense, and healthcare, just to name a few. And AI was actually heavily used by the pharmaceutical companies recently to accelerate the creation of their COVID-19 vaccines. But for all the benefit that AI brings, as these technologies become more accessible, they're also becoming a tool for bad actors to use against you and your business. So why is this a threat? Well, AI and ML made our threat list today due to the increasing ease of access to AI technologies such as ChatGPT. Just a few years ago, these types of tools were isolated to research labs and enthusiasts. Now anyone can sign up for them on the internet, just a few clicks. So how are bad actors using these technologies? Well, some current examples include automation. So using a technology such as ChatGPT, cybercriminals can have an AI write an email in seconds with perfect grammar and spelling, which could then be used in phishing campaigns. In fact, we're going to have a quick look at two videos I've created very recently, in fact, just to demonstrate how easily this can be done. So hopefully we're able to switch across to that. We'll have a look at that. There we go. Okay, so this is small for me, but yeah, this is the two examples here. This one is, yeah, this is me engaging with ChatGPT. I'm basically asking the AI to write an email to the accountant of a company or target business, informing them that we'll be changing our bank details. And you can see how quickly the AI will then spit out a response to this. Very, very quickly, perfect English, perfect grammar. It even has little placeholders, which I find quite funny because it's not necessarily being used in a phishing campaign way. In fact, a lot of AIs actually have ethical elements around how you're supposed to interact with them, but obviously you can see very quickly you can get around that. The second example here, another example of how it could be used as a phishing sort of template, is another common vector we see is when you basically a common one is to write an email to a user saying that their password has actually expired and it must be reset. Usually that would incur, hey, click on this link to reset it. Obviously the usual kind of stuff applies here, domain spoofing, email security stuff. The point we're making here is that a lot of the red flags that we normally see in phishing emails, you know, bad spelling, odd phrasing, maybe English isn't the first language, the person that wrote it, etc. All these are going away with AI, and we're seeing perfect emails that can be written in seconds by a machine. Not to mention, if someone could script this, you could effectively have thousands of unique emails being created by a system like this every hour. So you're never seeing the same pattern. So that was just a quick example. Obviously, it's AI is a very broad thing, but it's just a good example to show people live today. Second AI threat we're talking about is deepfake. Sorry, this technology can be used to create fake videos, images, and audio recordings that appear real, making it easier for cyber criminals to conduct phishing and social engineering attacks. And lastly, automated scan and exploitation. So AI and ML algorithms can actually automate the process of scanning for vulnerabilities and then exploiting them, making it easier for cyber criminals to compromise systems at scale. If you think about how many people it would take to actually do this, whereas an AI system can do it for you automatically. So a real world example of an event where AI was used in a cyber attack were the Deep Panda attack. Researchers discovered a cyber espionage group using AI and machine learning algorithms to evade detection and carry out highly targeted attacks against organizations in the finance, energy, healthcare, and government sectors. The APT group where this attack got its name is known as Deep Panda. They were implicated in the breach of the second largest health insurance company in the US, Anthem. The Deep Panda group used AI algorithms to analyze the behavior of the target organizations, in this case Anthem, identify the most vulnerable systems and then tailor their attacks accordingly. And this allowed the group to avoid being detected by traditional security measures such as firewalls and antivirus software. Another example of AI being used is an example for deep fake audio vishing, which is a phrase I thought I'd never actually say. Hackers used machine learning to clone someone's voice from multiple digital audio calls, video calls, and social media content. This content is then combined with social engineering techniques to deliver a voicemail which appears to come from someone with instructions to follow. And there's already been one documented case of this type of attack. The chief executive of a UK energy firm was tricked into sending 220,000 euros to the Hungarian supplier after receiving a phone call supposedly from the CEO of his parent firm in Germany. Now, the executive was told that the transfer was urgent and the funds had to be sent within the hour, and he actually did do this. The attackers were never caught. So you can imagine combining this technology with something like caller ID spoofing. It really shows the need to verify voicemail requests, or even in the future, AI might be able to do this in real time as if you're having a conversation. And even if you recognize that number, the number they're calling from and the person's voice, yeah, it still could be fake. So this is a big worry, as a lot of financial processes actually rely on voice confirmation. So how do we mitigate risk against this type of threat? So obviously the examples highlight the growing threat posed by AI and machine learning in the world of cybersecurity, and the need for organizations to implement proactive measures to defend against them. So here's some pointers that will hopefully mitigate risk. So educate and train employees, obviously provide employees with training on cybersecurity red flags, even if those flags are changing. In fact, it's more important to do that, such as how to recognize and respond to phishing attacks. And this is critical as the lines, as you've seen in the examples here, between social engineering and technological attacks actually get blurred by AI. And employees should definitely be at least informed about the capabilities of AI systems. Monitor for unusual behavior. So you can use AI and ML technologies yourself to detect and respond to unusual behavior, such as unusual network traffic or unexpected access attempts, to identify and prevent cyber attacks. AI actually can be a valuable tool for you to use to defend your business. And ensure you have strong procedures for any change request, major change requests specifically, such as an access control change or a financial transaction. And ideally, this would have multiple parties in the authorization process to ensure that a single person cannot be manipulated. Now, many of these tips will not only help against a specific AI and ML threats, but against a wide variety of cyber threats. And companies of all sizes will need to rapidly adapt to the increasing adoption of AI and think about how these models can impact their current security posture. So the second thing we're going to look at today is cloud security. So again, we're going to start off with what is cloud security. We're going to define our terms. So cloud security refers to the measures and technologies put in place to protect data and systems hosted on cloud computing platforms. With the increasing popularity of cloud computing, protecting sensitive data and systems in the cloud has become a top priority for organizations of all sizes. Now, cloud security encompasses a range of security measures and tech, including access controls, encryption, monitoring and logging, disaster recovery, security baselines, etc. The security of cloud systems and the data is actually the responsibility of both the cloud service provider, such as Microsoft, and the organization using that service, such as yourself or your business, of course. And so why is this a threat? Well, the cloud's becoming extremely popular, and it's a widely used tool among businesses of all sizes. So what's more, as internet use continues to increase over time and remote working, hybrid working becomes even more popular, we're seeing that the cloud is becoming even more widespread. And this continued increase in adoption has actually continued to make cloud systems a prime target for cyber criminals who are looking for new ways to exploit vulnerabilities in the cloud. So some examples of, I suppose, unique cloud threats are insider threats, yeah? So you've got employees, contractors, guest account partners with access to your cloud systems who can unintentionally or maliciously, of course, compromise data and systems. Account hijacking. So cyber criminals can use stolen credentials. These can be purchased off the dark web or phished, whatever, and they can exploit vulnerabilities to take over cloud accounts, giving them access to your data and systems. And one I see probably most common is misconfigured cloud services. So cloud systems can be extremely complicated, and organizations may inadvertently leave cloud platforms vulnerable to attack due to misconfigured security settings. So we're going to look at a real world event where this actually happened. The Capital One Financial Corporation is a large American bank specializing in credit cards, and they're the 8th largest commercial bank in the United States by assets. So a large company with probably a very large security budget. The Capital One data breach was a significant cybersecurity event. The breach involved the theft of sensitive information belonging to over 100 million Capital One customers, including things like names, addresses, credit scores, social security number, so PII, right? The breach was caused by a misconfigured firewall, of all things, in the company's cloud infrastructure, which allowed a hacker to gain access to Capital One's data stored in Amazon Web Services, known as AWS. The hacker was actually able to exploit the vulnerability to steal data belonging to Capital One customers over a period of several months. So they were there for several months doing things they shouldn't have. The Capital One data breach had far-reaching consequences for both the company and its customers. Capital One faced significant financial losses, as well as legal and regulatory investigations into the breach. The company also faced criticism for its failure to properly secure its cloud environment and protect the sensitive information of its clients. You can see on the screen there a sort of sorry from their CEO. I don't think any business owner wants to be in the position of writing that kind of thing publicly. So this data breach or that data breach is a notable example of the types of cybersecurity risks that organizations face when using cloud computing services. It highlights the importance of proper configuration and maintenance of cloud security measures, as well as the need for organizations to be vigilant about monitoring their cloud environments for signs of an unauthorized access. As in that example, the guy was actually in there for several months. That should have been noticed. So, how do we mitigate risk? Well, here's some tips, some best practices. So identify and inventory your cloud assets. We do this with physical stuff, right? You can only protect what you know actually exists. So too often we see half-finished projects, test systems, or legacy systems still live in customer cloud environments, and every single one of these can increase your attack surface and be a vector for attack. Conduct a security assessment. Perform a security assessment to identify potential risks and vulnerabilities in your cloud environment. And this should be an ongoing process, right? Once a year, once every 2 years, it's not really going to work. So most cloud providers actually will provide, Microsoft, for example, provide security baselines and guidelines so you can hit that standard and protect your assets. Encrypt data. So use encryption to protect sensitive data in transit, at rest in the cloud or on the local endpoint. And this is critical with so many companies placing more and more sensitive data into cloud systems, and obviously keep your encryption private keys completely secure. Use access controls. Implement access controls such as authentication and authorization to limit access to sensitive data and systems in the cloud. And this should also cover your IT teams, and also think about separation of privilege, right? Systems administrators can also be threats, either maliciously or by accident. So also a kind of an extension of this is to use multi-factor authentication, require multi-factor authentication. And I think the way we're seeing this go is it's actually best implemented now using something like a conditional access policy. This guarantees the enforcement of it, and it allows a bit more granularity around that. Monitor and log activity. So monitor and log all activity in your cloud environment to detect and respond to security threats. This can be a detection method for systems such as SIEM solutions, and an audit trail from a forensic or law enforcement perspective, should that be required. And implement cloud security policies. So establish security policies and procedures to ensure that your cloud environment is configured to an agreed security standard. So to quickly summarize cloud security, obviously, as we mentioned, companies of all sizes are using cloud. It's growing, continues to grow. So following best practices to secure these environments is critical this year, and to be honest, moving forward. So to summarize my talk today, we've spoken about many emerging threats, but don't forget that all the existing ones still remain, right? All of those are still there. They're now just different and evolving. So we may have tools, tactics, procedures to mitigate these, but cybersecurity is a moving target, with both sides rapidly adapting all the time. So moving forward, companies and business owners need to ensure that they're keeping up, responding, and putting in place strategies to protect not only their systems, but to be honest, more importantly, their business brand and their reputation. It only takes one cybersecurity incident to be publicly announced to undermine confidence in your brand, not to mention possible fines and loss of customers. So I hope you found some of this useful. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, AJ. Yeah, some really interesting things there. I mean, the whole phishing attack surface, if you like, is just increasing all the time. That's the biggest threat that we continue to see. I think through 2022, we saw a lot of that. And then obviously we're now seeing a lot of, getting more intelligent, I suppose. The wording is a lot better, and it's a lot more accurate, I suppose, and it's really deceiving. So we really need to keep our shields up to make sure that that businesses aren't being affected by this, And the deep fake thing is really interesting as well. I'm sure we're going to have some questions at the end of the webinar on the deep fake voice in particular, probably. I think probably the voice part will come first, and then the actual video part will come second, maybe, as as the technology evolves and becomes more reliable. Bad actors are going to start using that technology, and that's a big concern, because most financial transactions are backed up by a verbal kind of that's what we want to happen, type conversation. So that's really interesting. I'm sure we'll have questions at the end. I don't want to hold up Javed either. Javed is our next speaker today from KnowBe4, and he's going to go through some of the cyber, as you can see in the slide there, the cyber threats that you really can't ignore. I'm really excited to hear from Javed. So Javed, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. And yeah, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Javad Malik. Oh, yeah, that's me. That's my vanity slide. You can read that on the rerun. And I work for KnowBe4. We do security awareness and training and help people make better risk decisions. And when I was asked to do this talk, I thought, oh, trends. That's interesting. But you know, trends change and adapt. You know, there was a time when this kind of look was trendy. And actually, if you look at movies from the 80s, today we're meant to be dressing up like this. So predicting a trend is quite difficult, even when you have all the information available. I call this the predictions dilemma. So along the y-axis, you have like how interesting your prediction is, and along the x-axis, you have the uniqueness of your viewpoint. So, you know, you can go from boring to something that's really outrageous, or you can go like, you know, something that just is looking at extrapolating the trends to being very, very outrageous. So ideally, a good prediction, in my opinion, or a good indicator of where the future is lying is something that piques someone's curiosity, because you don't want it to be blatantly obvious, but you just want it to be beneath the area where people say that you've gone insane. So with that, we're going to set the scene a bit, and I'm going to go through some of these trends that have, some of them have been going on for a while, and what the new twist is on them, and obviously a look to the more distant future. And wrapping up with how we can protect ourselves. So setting the scene, as AJ alluded to, social engineering is really a big thing, and phishing is one of the largest sort of root cause of how organizations get breached. We see a lot of that. I mean, ransomware, we hear a lot about. A lot of that is through phishing. Business email compromise, a lot of that is through some sort of form of phishing. Unpatched software, weak credentials, all these things are obviously the top, like, you know, you can boil them down to the top 5 sort of attack actors that happen. And there's no shortage of stories that we see out there. It happens time and time again. So I think these are all things that we all agree on. There's no real disputing these when you look at all the news stories that happen. So let's look into one of the first trends I want to go into, is that like trusted parties. And that could be either your third parties, but also insiders within your organization. And with remote working, hybrid working, we've got a lot of these cases where a lot of organizations are still trying to figure out what's the best way of moving forward with this. Like we through the lockdown, we've adopted a lot of like cloud providers, as AJ alluded to. It's like there's a lot of cloud risks out there. So you know, we need to think about how we view trust, but then also if someone can take over an identity, how they can abuse the trust that people put in that identity. So you know, there was a, you know, hackers, this is a couple of years ago, they got into Twitter, into the back end. Literally, they just phoned up and said, hello, I'm a colleague of yours. I've lost access to the admin console. Can you give me access? And they said, okay, you're a colleague. You sound trustworthy. And as a result, they then started tweeting out from known trusted accounts. So like Bill Gates' account, or Elon Musk, or Donald Trump, or whoever it was at that time. And they were saying, hey, we're supremely rich. Send us Bitcoins and we'll double it and send it back to you. So, you know, it's one of those things where there's trust, that has a lot of value, and we cannot, you know, underestimate the impact that has. There's lots of cases like the Cisco one where, you know, people internally within organizations, they go a bit rogue. Although this isn't like a common occurrence, it does happen, and we need to be mindful of that. And, you know, there was like, you know, Norway's state investment fund that suffered like a $10 million loss. And again, it was like built on trust. Employee was tricked into sending it. Other examples we've seen of like the third party supply chain or the supplier web, everything has a really strange knock-on effect. So we saw like when Wuhan is actually one of the biggest exporters of synthetic chemicals that are used in the production of drugs like meth and what have you. So when lockdown happened, cargo planes were grounded, and the cartels in Mexico that were one of the biggest importers of this, they could not get hold of their synthetic chemicals to make meth. On top of that, the border between Mexico and the US was shut down. As a result, if you wanted to buy some meth in San Diego, the price had gone up from $5 to $7 a pill. The point being that we do not know exactly, despite all the technology, we do not know when one system goes down what the knock-on effect will be, where it will be. It's very much like the butterfly effect. So, when we look at our third parties and our suppliers and everything, it's not just about, oh, what do we use this, say, SaaS app for, but really, if it went down, what would be the knock-on effect to us? How would that affect how we supply our customers or our partners? And it's quite scary when you see certain systems go down. You see like, wow, that suddenly now, like, has stopped ventilators being delivered to hospitals, or foreign exchange currencies are being stopped, or people can't get energy delivered to their houses. These are really real impacts that we can have, and these are things we really need to think about, because this will only increase. In fact, there's an example where when Russia invaded Ukraine, Ukraine was a company in Ukraine was developing the software for the electrical vehicle charging points. So what they did, they pushed out an update which basically bricked all their EV charging points and put anti-Putin slogans on the screen. So it's something to bear in mind. BEC, business email compromise, CEO fraud, very common, again with a trust theme. Stu is our CEO at KnowBe4, and Alana's our director of operations. And after she joined, she was sent an email claiming to be from Stu, saying, hey, send me all the employees' HR details. Bit of a bold move, I suppose, going after a security awareness company with a social engineering attack, but luckily it was caught and nothing happened. Credential compromise is another big issue, and Have I Been Pawned is a really good website. If you've not visited it, you can just go to haveibeenpawned.com, enter in your email address, and it will let you know if that email address has been found in any data breaches. So say you have online account at catfood.com. I don't know. And you use that same password for other websites. What criminals will do if catfood.com is breached, they will get the password from there and they will try using it against every other website they can think of with your email address. And if you're reusing the same password, they will get in. So they will use things like brute force, password stuffing, credential stuffing, etc., etc. That's why, like as AJ mentioned, multi-factor authentication is a really good control. But also, we're seeing people attacking multi-factor authentication through social engineering. They will phone up people. They will say, "Oh, we're your bank. We're sending you a text message. Please read the code out to us." That kind of thing. And a lot of times, people have fallen for these. There's been a rise in credential stuffing or credential attacks. So I think protecting our credentials, and there's been lots of talks about passwordless or alternative methods of authentication. There's use of biometrics. This is all great stuff, but none of it is 100% fully implemented today. So there's a big responsibility for us to take care in how, if you're providing the service, how you architect it, and if you're a user, getting the right training in knowing how to use these systems properly. Denial of service is one of those attacks that's been around forever, so there's nothing quite new. I suppose what's changed is the mechanism or the purposes of it. It depends on the type of industry you're in, and it still can be quite devastating. We've seen quite a bit of that in the Ukraine conflict now, that people are using this as a kind of like offensive way or a distraction tactic. so that people are focused on this, and then they can do something on the other end of your network. And you can see these have been increased as bandwidth has increased, as the number of owned devices increased. This has gone up. There's a lot here with that ties into the Internet of Things. So maybe everyone's got these internet connected devices around the house or around the offices, and a lot of these are notoriously insecure. So criminals can actually use default passwords, run a script, go out there, hijack hundreds of thousands of these devices, like web connected cameras or TVs or whatever, and then they can use them to launch these sorts of denial of service attacks or other things. So there's not a lot of computing power on it. You can't really use a hacked camera to mine bitcoins, but you can use it to send out some attacks as part of a larger botnet. Physical security, I think this is one of the things that is often underlooked, and we often take it for granted, but there is still a lot of theft of physical devices that takes place, and it's at that point where a lot of organizations are like, did we actually have full disk encryption enabled on the laptop that I left in the pub, or was there any other sensitive data in a printed form or something like that? Were we using removable media, all that kind of thing? And I think with the hybrid environment, it's really made an impact and changed the way a lot of people work. There's been lots of cases where people are working from home, they've got their corporate laptop and they're doing personal stuff on it, or they're letting their kids do their homework on it, or what have you. And this can introduce a whole new level of risk to an organization. There's, stealing of hardware is still very profitable, but also we've seen lots of these proof of concepts of these kinds of attacks where people have malware-laden charging cables. So you think it's a charging cable, you plug it into your phone or your laptop, and it appears to be charging, but in between it could be intercepting all your communications, or it could be taking a copy of data off from there as well. There's a whole bunch of controls you can do. So again, just like a unknown USB drive or an unknown anything, you shouldn't be plugging anything into your machine that is not your own or unknown, especially if you're using a public point. Now, there haven't been really any live live examples of this being used, but the proof of concept is there and it works. So it's probably one of those things that would be used in a very targeted attack. So if someone's really going after the CEO of a company or the CFO or a specific admin, then this would be one of those things, and it would be very hard to detect later as to how someone got into that machine or that network. Deepfakes, yes, everyone's favorite topic. They are videos, pictures, audio, whichever format you want, they're all there. This was one of the first ones that was really popular. It was like a deepfake of then President Obama, but even that had like a bunch of weird artifacts in it which threw people off. But now, day by day, that processing power is going up. I mean, just before hitting record, Gordon was talking about we were talking about filters on TikTok, and some of them are really good. You can put them on, turn on the filter, and it like de-age you or put on makeup on you, what have you. And it's so accurate now that it doesn't blur. It doesn't, like, you can run your hand over your face and it still looks like it's the real thing. So, these things will be used more and more in the future in attacks. So, you could be having a video call with someone thinking that it's your colleague or your boss, and it could be someone else. So, it's really increasing. There's this website, I quite like it. It's called thispersondoesnotexist.com. And if you go there, every time you refresh the page, it will generate an image like the one on the screen of this kid, which is 100% computer generated. This person doesn't exist at all. There are some things that come out a bit weird every now and then. So if you look at the hands of the kid, hands are a weird thing. People, for some reason, AI really struggles with hands. Gives people like 7 fingers or whatever you, or really weird. But again, that is something that's very temporary. It's going to increase in its effectiveness going forward. But you can always generate something like this, and we've seen lots of these sorts of examples where an image like this is generated. You crop it a bit so that the hands are taken out or the imperfections taken out, and then you use it as a profile picture on LinkedIn or any other social media. Set up an account, and AI can write you a bio, a history, and everything. So setting up of these fake accounts, puppet accounts, is very, very easy. And to echo what AJ said earlier, yes, there have been some cases reported of these voice deepfakes where people swear blind that the person that phoned me up was my best friend or my boss or my client, and they asked me to do this, and therefore I done it. So I think when we look at this in totality, what this gives is criminals a really good layered approach which they can go through. So it's not just that you're going to receive a phishing email. You might receive a voice note saying, "Hi, this is the receptionist from the dentist. You've got an appointment at 3 o'clock today. We'll send you an email. If you don't want it, then please hit cancel or reschedule it." And then you'll get the phishing email. So it sort of like layers it. They prep you with one thing with nothing malicious in it, and then the actual payload comes. Now, if you think about, you can do this with, if you enhance it even more with a little video or an image or some stolen credentials. And the fact is that we will the more elements there are, the more the victim will end up trusting this source, and they will do what they ask. And this is a very, very, I think, scary prospect for the future that we see. I'll talk about the AI elephant in the room as well. And, again, ChatGPT, I said, well, write an email from Netflix saying that the credit card's expired and everything in green on the screen is by ChatGPT. And yeah, it's grammatically correct. It's there's no spelling mistakes. It is, for all intents and purposes, a better email than what I could have written myself. But that's not all. I want something else in it. Okay, sending a phishing email is one thing. What else can AI help me with? So I said, okay, imagine I want to embed a Word document into this. Maybe I want to say, well, AI, write me a Word macro that when clicked on will add an Outlook rule that would forward me a copy of all your incoming and outgoing emails. So can ChatGPT do that for me? Of course it can. It gave me this code. So now I can go into Word, add this as a macro, put in my own email address here, and send it to you. And then when you open it, it'll say run macro, you run macro, and there'll be an invoice in there from Netflix or what have you. And you think, oh, okay, maybe I need to do this or not. But in the background, it's now added that rule into your inbox. And this is a really, really crafty way of getting into an organization, because then, unless you actually go in to check your rules on your email, and how many people have done that recently? Yeah, I haven't. I haven't checked recently what rules are in my inbox. But then I am getting a copy of every email incoming and outgoing. And the beauty, I suppose, of this is that even when you change your email, your password for your email, even when you enable MFA, I'm still getting a copy of all of those things. So this is a real easy way, dangerous way of getting into an organization. So sufficiently scary, I suppose, doom and gloom stories finished. How can we protect ourselves? I think security awareness and training is kind of like one of the foundations of everything that we do here. It's like technology is very good. Actually, when you look at it, it's because a lot of the security technologies, when implemented properly, they do a really good job. It's really difficult to directly go in and attack a well architected website. So criminals are now going after humans directly because that's the only unknown. So making people aware of the threats that are out there, and training them, and not just training individuals, but working on really creating a culture of security. And culture of security is it's like one of those things when if you go to a football match and you see like all the fans break out into song at the same time, even if it's something that they've just made up on the spot, it's like, wow, how did that happen? And that's because there's a shared culture. So there's people that don't even know each other, but they start acting and behaving in a certain way. And this is what we can do within organizations. I'm not saying we all turn into football hooligans in the workplace, but what we can do is create an environment where behaviors are seen and mimicked and shared. So, you know, if you're the one person that starts locking their workstation every time you get up and walk away from it, you'll see that after a while, the people next to you will see how easy it is and they'll start doing it. And then that will have a knock-on effect. And after a while, it will be the organization where everyone goes and locks their machine every time they walk away from it. So whenever a new employee starts, guess what they're going to do? They're going to lock their machine when they walk away from it. So these sorts of behaviors, all of them can be adopted through building a culture. I'd say evaluate and look at your supply chain, look at your trusted parties, really focus on your credentials, your passwords, use a password manager if you can, implement 2FA, MFA, you know, something that's phishing resistant is always good. Focus on those fundamentals. So I think while we're always looking to the future and we're looking to the way that a lot of these tools are developing, they still take advantage of the sort of fundamentals. It's like social engineering, unpatched software, credentials, and what have you. So focus on patching, least privilege, you know, having an asset inventory, all that kind of thing. And the final point I'd say is like you have a rich source of intelligence internally within your organization. Don't just rely on external sources, but internally. Go through the last 2 years of incident logs in your organization or get your intern to do it and see what trends there are. You will probably find there's probably like 3 to 5 common underlying root causes for majority of your incidents. Oh, we have a legacy system and that's why, you know, our site keeps going down, or passwords are poor, or, you know, we don't patch in time, or whatever it might be, and use that as driving your strategy as to the areas you really need to beef up. Anyway, yeah, humans are still the de facto top choice. Focus on training them, helping them, and empower them to make better security decisions. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and attention, and I am back to Gordon.
Thank you very much. That's really good. I enjoyed that. Interesting to learn more about that whole deep fake thing. That's where I think this is going. There's going to be a lot more of that this year, I think. Also interesting on the supplier front as well. The supply chain management, I guess. And that's one thing that we've been pretty strong at IT Hot Desk, is looking at, you know, how we interact with our customers, how we interact with our systems. And, you know, if you think about it, we're quite high risk, right? Because we've got access to our customer systems. So as an IT company, you know, we've got remote control tools, we've got all sorts of things that we can get into our client systems with. So we've been really strong at enforcing kind of policy, conditional access, MFA, linking, you know, single sign-on amongst all the different applications that we use into our systems, so we can disable, control, monitor all these accesses that we've got into systems. So that's one piece that I think that we're quite strong at as an IT company, and kind of differentiates us, I guess, against some of our competitors. But anyway, to get on to wrapping up our webinar today, I'd like to kind of open up the floor and do a Q&A. We don't appear to have any other questions that have came in, so please, attendees, open up the Q&A window and type in any questions that you've got, and we'll get them published, and then we'll be able to answer them for you. So please type away. I'm hoping that you've got some questions after today's webinar. There was one that came in earlier on today, actually, and it's a question from a customer. So I think they're hiding behind the shield of my email, as it were, not letting us know who they are. So they will remain anonymous. But they've emailed in just asking about Hikvision IP cameras. Sounds like they've got some Hikvision IP cameras in their offices. and they're unsure about what that cyber risk is. Obviously, these are IP cameras that are connected to the internet ultimately. So I think what I'll do is I'll just ask AJ just to jump in, and Javid, if you've got anything to add to that as well, of course, then jump in. But they're just wondering what the cybersecurity risk of that is, AJ.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think ultimately this goes back down to trusted parties and trusted supply chain. So, you know, there has been some murmurings in the media around Hikvision, companies like Huawei, supplying major, obviously not just private companies, but including UK government. I think Huawei as well there. And ultimately, do you trust that supplier? If they may have an agenda of their own. They may be state-sponsored, a company, you know, from China, etc. So they might be utilizing a kind of, you know, they might be monitoring or sending information back to someone that they shouldn't. So I think it really goes down back to, yeah, trusted supply chain. So I think we're seeing a little bit more awareness of that. In fact, the supply chain was the thing I dropped from my talk. I had originally 3 to 2, and I think it's very important. That was the one that was dropped, and I think we're starting to see that. You know, I think very recently the European Commission dropped TikTok. You're not allowed TikTok on your phones for the European Commission business phones. So we're starting to see this sort of almost like consolidation back down the way. So I think Hikvision, I think with what's going on at the moment, I would probably be looking to move away from these kind of potentially unknown variables. There are companies out there that are maybe complying with more regulatory frameworks in the EU and the UK, and also just having some of that kind of in-house. You know, you can actually get a more simplistic camera system that is actually writing to a hard drive locally, and that the way it's not, you know, sending information anywhere else. I know Hikvision can do that, but there is always that element of unknown, and I think it's about reducing that unknown risk with your supply chain, be it Hikvision, be it whatever. I hope that answers the question. It's a big topic, which is why I can't answer it quickly. But yeah, on the face of it, just really do due diligence on your supply chain and what technology stack you're using.
I just did a quick Google on that as well, just a quick Google on Hikvision, and it appears that they're backed by the Chinese government. So if that comes into your risk matrix, I guess, then maybe that should be taken into consideration as well. Okay, looks like we've got another question that's come in. What would be your top 3 security checks to get employees to do, i.e. checking your email rules? That's quite a good question. I mean, top 3 security checks. I mean, I don't know if there is a top 3 security checks that we would do. I think it comes down to the individual business and systems that they've got and what risks are around them, is what I would think. But we'll open up to the team to see what they think about it as well. But I do know that, you know, some of the things like checking email rules, I mean, that can be done by tool set. So, you know, across your environment, we can run tools to check the security of your systems, and you know they can run live all the time, so in real time, if you like. So we can get alerts coming back in saying, oh, there's a rule being added, and we can verify that rule and go, yeah, that rule looks okay, looks normal, or oh, that looks a bit strange going out to a Gmail account or something like that, you know, forwarding on emails or something. But yeah, there's definitely tool set that can be deployed to manage that, because you can't only rely on your people. You know, people are going to be busy in the business. They're delivering on their job role, or you know, their job description, and having them dipping in and out of rules every day is probably a bit over the top for them, and then probably they're not going to do it, even if you ask them to do it. But I guess there's you know, I guess it depends on the maturity of the business and how they can get their employees to do that. But the original question was, what would be your top 3 security checks for employees to do? So, AJ, Javid, you got any recommendations on those kind of top 3 things?
Oh, it's a tough one, like you said. I'd say I'd start with credentials to be number 1. Like, check your passwords, make sure you're not reusing the same password across different sites. If you're using a password manager, a lot of them have like the feature built in where they can do an audit of all your passwords in it. So they can tell you the strength of the passwords and whether they're being reused or whether they've been found in a breach. So I'd say like take advantage of that. Enable multi-factor authentication on any accounts that have that facility available. That will really reduce your risk. And then on personal devices, at least I'd say like make sure that you keep them patched and the latest updates are installed. That's something I know a lot of people get a bit lazy on, or like my wife's the worst. She's got an iPhone and she's always like 3 versions behind, and I'm always like, why don't you update it? And she's like, it's going to take me an hour. So I think it's one of those things, like scheduling time to just do these few basic checks. And the final thing I'd say is just look at what your digital footprint is like. Like, what information do you have that's publicly available? A lot of us will join a social media platform and then we use it for a bit and then we'll leave it, or then we'll just a fun exercise is maybe like get a friend and you both try to find out as much information as you can about each other blindly on the internet, or you could do it as a family. That's a very nerdy game I just suggested, so ignore me. But it's really insightful as to what things you can find out about each other when you do things online. And for anything that's not needed, just take it off the internet as best as you can.
Yeah, if I've got a few comments on that as well, just real quick. So I wouldn't have users checking anything. That shouldn't, I think, how that be done. Basically, the way I see the way that you would enforce it at corporate level is that you've got your administrative controls. These are policy, so like employee handbooks, how they should utilize systems, things like security awareness training, and your technical controls that implement that at an enforcement level. So, for example, credentials. Appreciate we've all got different cloud accounts, but most cloud providers have some level of enforcement. So you can't let them create an unsafe password. You cannot let them create an account without multi-factor authentication being implemented. It shouldn't be up to the user. It should be an enforced management level. It's like, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but these like vans you see on the road, this van's limited to 50 miles an hour. Well, why is that? Because they don't want the guy driving at 100 miles an hour. That's enforced, right? So we should have that enforcement across the board at a corporate level. But yeah, I mean, the top 3 things as well, just I think I would echo basically what Javad and Gordon have said, is it really is train your staff, 100%, train your staff. We all take driving lessons to learn how to drive a car. Don't see that many businesses taking, lessons that how to be secure online, and all of the businesses now is pretty much conducted online. So it baffles me that there's not more investment in this space. Multi-factor authentication, 100%, because that just prevents anyone, even if they have your credentials. Obviously, there are proof of concept ways around that, but they're very hard to realistically achieve. And I think the third one is just, I think it goes back to what Javad said in his talk, the culture. It's about getting that culture. I think everybody's kind of at a time, maybe 20, 15 years ago, we were all kind of like hold the handrail, all that kind of stuff. But there's the digital equivalent of that, and the consequences can be as dire. And I think people need to just think secure first, not usability first. And I think that's changing now. Hopefully that answers it.
Thanks, guys. No, that's really good. Next question was do we have any experience with a security company called Heimdall? I think is how you pronounce it. I've never had any experience of them. I don't know if the team here have, but I think any appears that they're an endpoint detection and response solution company, cybersecurity related. I mean, there's lots of different businesses out there that are providing services. We use Gartner to look at our partners that we work with. Gartner reviews are pretty standard across the industry. So they rate in Gartner, so just go to gartner.com and have a search for them, and you'll see what quadrant that they're sitting in. Top right quadrant are the ones that are excelling in their business and spending a lot of money in R&D and all these kinds of things. So just have a look yourself and make your own kind of judgment on them. Certainly as a business from our side, we partner with KnowBe4. These guys are excellent at what they do, and they've got excellent solutions. They're spending lots of money on R&D. They're doing all the things that good companies do, and that's you know, we use Gartner to determine who we want to work with, and our peer groups to find out, you know, where the best solutions reside. So hopefully that answers your question on that one. Last question that we've got today is, how safe are password managers? I've always had a slight nervousness at using one. So yeah, I can absolutely resonate with that. But I will pass that, I think, to the team, either AJ or Javed to answer for us.
So if I don't mind me just nipping on this one first. So yeah, I get it. You're basically putting all of your keys inside one safe. And if that safe gets compromised, all the keys are compromised. Well, yes and no. I think you need to look at, there's always a trade-off with using a security solution. So in my opinion, password managers, the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. The reason being is that you are very, very easily able to generate ridiculously long passwords or phrases, as we'll get into. They're unique to each site. So if a credential breach occurs, they can't steal your credentials like in Javad's talk and then log into your LinkedIn and Facebook, because it's not the same password, right? And a human, I mean, I think myself, I use 2 different password managers, not going to get into the details, but I think in my personal accounts, I have 131 accounts now, which is crazy. Because if you asked me, I would probably tell you I have 15. But the reality is, no, I don't. I have 130, you know, insurance companies, this, Netflix, it might be, you know, whatever. Everything's an account now. Everyone's got apps, everyone's got accounts. So yeah, and obviously companies can be attacked. The password managers themselves can be attacked. So you have to look at how they're utilizing the actual storage of your account data and those keys. What we'd always recommend is the access to that master vault, if you will, should always be protected by a passphrase, not a password. We can talk about that another time, but think sentences, not words. And also multi-factor authentication. And I think if that's in place, and then you obviously have multi-factor authentication, say I have 130 accounts, let's say 100 of those are provided or protected by multi-factor authentication, that even if my password manager is breached, even if that happens, which is unlikely, but potentially possible, they still don't have my phone. They still don't have my biometric, and I'm going to be aware of that. Most password managers, you know, the big players in that space are very open about security. There was a time 5-10 years ago when everybody wanted to hush a breach under the rug. I think now it's about actually being very transparent. What are you doing to enhance your security? What happened? What was breached? You know, it's like banks, right? People robbed banks. Why? Because that's where the money was, right? People attack password managers because that's where the new equivalent of money and keys are. And so it's just about how they react to it. They will get attacked. That's a guarantee. It's how they deal with that, how they move forward and adapt. So I think the benefits outweigh the risk, but ultimately risk is a decision that every person, every business needs to make themselves. And it's whether that risk tolerance for you is acceptable.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing about password managers for me is that I didn't use one for, probably a couple of years ago. It was the first time that I started using one. And I think what I found was I just reused the same password everywhere on websites that I didn't really care about too much. You know, what they weren't, you know, it was like the catfood.com website. You know, I just use whatever, don't care if somebody hacks it. But the reality is that you do care, because by the time you've played about on that website, you've uploaded information to it, you've maybe got your credit card in there, all of that stuff. So then I kind of came to the conclusion, working alongside AJ, that having a password manager and having different passwords on every website that I visit, different passwords for my applications, and strong passwords, not only just, you know, my standard, you know, threat landscape 1, 2, 3 or whatever, you know, and having passwords that just do not make any sense whatsoever, or passphrases is what AJ was referring to there, of, you know, sitting in my office today, I've got a window, some glass in a wall, you know, window glass wall is something that, you know, doesn't really make much sense, and maybe is a passphrase to use in a password. So, you know, that type of thing. But yeah, it's interesting how passwords have evolved over the years. But that's a completely different webinar for that one, I think. But yeah, I'd like to just wrap up. We're 2 minutes out from closing up for 11 o'clock. So thank you very much for all our attendees that have attended today. I sincerely hope that you've got some good information out of the webinar today. AJ, Javid, thank you so much for putting together. I know it takes a lot of time to come together and put together a webinar. It just takes a lot of time in the business, but it's definitely worth it, and I'm sure the attendees will appreciate it and reach out when available. Thank you for our customers for joining, of course. I noticed that we've got a few online, and of course prospects that we've got in our database. If we could help you with anything today, anything related to cybersecurity, or in fact your IT support, IT strategy, reach out to myself or AJ and IT Hot Desk. We're willing to, happy, delighted to talk to you. If you've got anything for Javid, sorry, then email him directly, and that's fine as well, I'm sure. But that will wrap up today's webinar. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.